Listen to me carefully, because this moment is not accidental. You did not stumble into this message by chance, and you are not hearing these words because of curiosity or emotion. You are here because God is speaking to your spirit right now, calling your attention, shaking your heart, and demanding that you wake up to a truth you have been trying to ignore. There is a person connected to your destiny, a life tied to your obedience, a soul bound to your assignment. And God is saying with authority and urgency, this person is your mission. Do not leave them. Too many people want a purpose that feels convenient, a calling that does not cost them anything, a mission that does not stretch their patience or challenge their character. But God never assigns missions that are comfortable. God assigns missions that transform you, refine you, and reveal what truly lives inside your heart. The person you are tempted to walk away from, the one who frustrates you, drains you, misunderstands you, or seems slow to change, may be the very reason God has kept you where you are. Do not measure your assignment by how easy it feels. Measure it by how deeply it calls you to depend on God. There are moments in life when God does not change the situation because the situation is the instrument. I have prayed for relief. You have prayed for escape. You have prayed for replacement, but God has been silent because God is asking something greater of you: faithfulness. Faithfulness is not staying when it feels good. Faithfulness is staying when everything in you wants to leave, but something deeper anchors you in obedience. That anchor is not your strength. That anchor is God. You see, God does not connect people randomly. When God places someone in your path and ties your heart to their journey, it is not always for mutual comfort. Sometimes it is for divine responsibility. Sometimes God chooses you to carry someone when they cannot carry themselves. Sometimes God assigns you to stand in the gap, to speak hope when hope is gone, to believe when belief has collapsed. And when you abandon that assignment prematurely, you are not just walking away from a person, you are stepping away from a moment God intended to use to shape both of you. You must understand this truth deeply. Not every difficult person is a distraction. Some are divine assignments disguised as burdens. If you only stay where you are celebrated, you will never experience the power of being sent. God does not only send you to those who are ready. God often sends you to those who are broken, resistant, fearful, and unfinished. And that is where your obedience becomes sacred. Many people confuse emotional exhaustion with spiritual permission to leave. Feeling tired does not mean God has released you. Feeling unappreciated does not mean your mission is over. Feeling misunderstood does not mean you have failed. It often means you are exactly where you are supposed to be. God never promised ease, but God promised purpose. And purpose often lives on the other side of perseverance. The person you are considering leaving may be standing at the edge of transformation. They may be one conversation away from clarity, one act of patience away from healing, one example of faith away from awakening. And if you walk away now, you may never see what God was preparing to do through you. Do not underestimate the power of consistency. God uses steady presence more than dramatic gestures. There are assignments that look small but carry eternal weight. God does not always announce your mission with thunder. Sometimes it comes quietly, wrapped in responsibility, disguised as inconvenience. The enemy does not need to destroy you if he can simply distract you. If he can convince you that your assignment is optional, he has already weakened your impact. But God is calling you back to clarity. This person is not a mistake. This season is not random. This connection is intentional. You are not staying because of guilt. You are staying because of obedience. Obedience is not blind, it is anchored in trust. Trust that God sees what you cannot see. Trust that God is working beneath the surface even when there is no visible progress. Trust that every act of patience, every word of encouragement, every moment of restraint is being recorded in the unseen realm. God often tests your capacity to love before expanding your influence. If you cannot remain faithful to one assignment, you will not be trusted with many. If you abandon people when they are inconvenient, you are not ready for greater responsibility. Growth is not proven by how high you rise, but by how long you can stand firm when pressure comes. You must also understand that missions are not permanent in the same way seasons are not permanent. But only God decides when a mission is complete. Leaving before God releases you creates unnecessary cycles of regret and spiritual stagnation. You keep starting over because you keep leaving too soon. You keep asking for new beginnings when God is asking for deeper commitment. The person assigned to you may never say thank you. They may never acknowledge your effort. They may never fully understand the sacrifice you made. But obedience does not require recognition. God sees what people overlook. God honors what others dismiss. And God rewards faithfulness in ways that go beyond human applause. Do not let frustration rewrite your identity. You are not weak because you feel tired. You are human. Strength is not the absence of weariness. It is the decision to keep going while leaning on God. When you feel depleted, that is not the signal to leave. That is the signal to draw closer to God. God does not ask you to carry the weight alone. God asks you to carry it with Him. Sometimes God keeps you in a difficult assignment because He is shaping your character more than changing the other person. While you are focused on their growth, God is refining your patience, deepening your compassion, sharpening your discernment. What feels like delay is often development. What feels like stagnation is often preparation. You must resist the temptation to romanticize escape. Leaving always looks easier from the inside of exhaustion. But ease is not always alignment. Comfort is not always confirmation. The path of obedience often feels heavy because it carries purpose, and purpose always demands something from you. The person you are assigned to may reflect parts of yourself you have not healed yet. God often uses relationships as mirrors. What irritates you may be revealing something God wants to address in you. Running away does not remove the lesson, it only postpones it. There is also a sacred power in staying when others would leave. In a world, RLD, that abandons quickly, consistency becomes revolutionary. When you stay, you embody the faithfulness of God. When you remain patient, you reflect the mercy of God. When you refuse to give up, you demonstrate the endurance God has shown toward you. Think about how many times God could have walked away from you but did not. How many moments you were slow to change, stubborn in your ways, unaware of the grace surrounding you, and yet God remained faithful. If you have received patience, you are capable of extending it. If you have been given mercy, you are called to reflect it. Do not confuse boundaries with abandonment. God may call you to adjust how you engage, but not to disappear. Wisdom is not withdrawal. Wisdom is learning how to stay without losing yourself. You are allowed to protect your spirit while still honoring your assignment. God does not require you to be consumed, only to be committed. There is a difference between rescuing and remaining. You are not responsible for saving anyone. You are responsible for obedience. God does the transforming. Your role is presence, prayer, consistency, and truth. When you try to control outcomes, you exhaust yourself. When you trust God with outcomes, you find peace, even in difficulty. Some of the greatest breakthroughs happen after the longest endurance. The moment you are tempted to leave may be the moment God is closest to moving. Resistance often intensifies before release. Do not misinterpret pressure as failure. Pressure is often a sign that something significant is about to shift. You must also understand that missions shape legacy. Long after words are forgotten, faithfulness is remembered. Someone's life might change because you did not walk away. Someone's future may open because you stayed. Someone's belief in God may be restored because you reflected consistency instead of abandonment. God is not asking you to stay forever. God is asking you to stay faithful. There is a difference. Forever belongs to God. Faithfulness belongs to you. One step at a time, one day at a time, one decision at a time. Do not let the weight of tomorrow steal the obedience of today. When doubt whispers that your effort is wasted, remember that nothing offered to God is ever wasted. Seeds grow underground long before they break the surface. Silence does not mean inactivity. God is always working, even when you cannot trace the movement. You may feel unseen, but you are not unnoticed. You may feel forgotten, but you are remembered. You may feel overlooked, but God's eyes have never left you. And the assignment you are carrying is not heavy because it is meaningless. It is heavy because it is sacred. Stay long enough to see what God will do. Stay long enough for your obedience to speak louder than your frustration. Stay long enough for faith to mature beyond emotion. Stay long enough for purpose to outweigh discomfort. This person is not your accident. This connection is not your burden alone. This mission is not beyond your capacity, because God never assigns without providing strength. The grace you need is already available. The wisdom you seek is already accessible. The endurance you lack will be renewed as you lean into God. Do not leave because it is hard. Do not leave because it is slow. Do not leave because it is uncomfortable. Stay because God placed you there. Stay because obedience matters. Stay because faith is proven in perseverance. Stay because someone's breakthrough may be attached to your consistency. Stay because your own growth is unfolding in ways you cannot yet see. Stay because when God assigns a mission, He also writes a story of transformation that unfolds in layers, moments, quiet victories, unseen shifts, and sacred endurance. And as long as you remain aligned with God, that story continues to move, breathe, and unfold in ways that reach far beyond what your eyes can measure, far beyond what your emotions can interpret, far beyond what this moment can explain. And even now, as you feel the weight, as you feel the resistance, as you feel the temptation to step away, God is calling you deeper, anchoring you stronger, shaping you quietly, and inviting you to trust Him just a little longer, to remain just a little steadier, to believe just a little deeper, knowing that what He has begun will not be abandoned, that what He has assigned will not be wasted, and that your obedience in this moment is carrying more power, meaning, and eternal significance than you realize, as God continues to work, to shape, to refine, and to move through your willingness to stay when everything else tells you to go. There is a sacred discipline in staying present when everything within you wants to disconnect. God often reveals strength, not in dramatic breakthroughs, but in quiet endurance. When you remain attentive to the person entrusted to you, you become a vessel through which God can release timing, wisdom, and direction. Many abandon their assignment because they mistake silence for absence, yet God is most active in the unseen moments. What appears still on the surface is often being rearranged at the foundation. You are not called to fix every flaw or solve every struggle. You are called to stand, to listen, to speak truth when necessary, and to remain anchored when emotions fluctuate. God never intended for you to carry outcomes, only obedience. When you release the pressure to control results, you create space for God to move freely. Faithfulness is not about performance, it is about posture. A heart positioned toward God can sustain pressure that talent alone cannot. There are seasons when God tests your commitment by allowing disappointment to linger. This is not punishment, it is preparation. Endurance matures discernment. The longer you stay grounded, the clearer your spiritual vision becomes. You begin to recognize when to speak and when to be silent, when to act and when to wait. This clarity does not come quickly. It is formed through consistency, humility, and trust in God's process. Understand this deeply. Leaving prematurely often feels like relief, but it carries hidden cost. You may escape discomfort, but you also forfeit growth that only comes through perseverance. God values completion. What you finish shapes your authority. What you endure expands your capacity. When you see assignments through, even when they drain you, you develop resilience that prepares you for greater responsibility. God often places people in your life who activate dormant strength. They challenge your patience, your compassion, your humility, not to weaken you, but to awaken deeper reliance on God. If everything were easy, faith would never stretch. If everyone responded quickly, endurance would never form. Growth is forged where resistance exists. You may feel like your words fall on deaf ears, but God hears every prayer you whisper in frustration. Nothing offered sincerely is lost. Even when the other person appears unchanged, something is shifting within you. God works simultaneously on both sides of obedience. While you focus on the visible struggle, God is shaping invisible character. There is also a divine exchange that happens when you stay. God gives strength in proportion to surrender. The moment you admit your limitations and lean fully into God, grace multiplies. You begin to realize that endurance is not about how much you can tolerate, but how deeply you trust God to sustain you. Do not underestimate the power of presence. Sometimes the greatest gift you offer is not advice or correction, but consistency. Being there communicates value. Staying sends a message that abandonment is not the default response to difficulty. In a world where commitment is fragile, your steadiness becomes a testimony of God's faithfulness. You must guard your heart from bitterness while you remain. Bitterness drains purpose. Resentment clouds discernment. Staying with a guarded heart is just as damaging as leaving. Ask God to purify your motives daily. Let compassion replace frustration. Let humility silence pride. Let love guide your responses, even when emotions resist. God does not ask you to ignore your own well-being. Rest is not rebellion. Renewal is not retreat. There are times to pause, to seek counsel, to replenish strength, but these moments are meant to restore, not remove you from assignment. Balance is learned through prayerful awareness, not impulsive decisions. Some people walk away because they fear being taken advantage of, but obedience is not exploitation. God honors boundaries established with wisdom. You are allowed to say no without abandoning your mission. You are allowed to step back without stepping away. God provides wisdom to navigate complexity without forfeiting purpose. The longer you stay aligned with God, the more you realize that missions are not measured by visible success, but by spiritual integrity. What matters is not how impressive your role appears, but how faithfully you carry it. God looks at the heart, at intention, at obedience expressed through perseverance. There will be moments when you question whether your presence matters. In those moments, remember that God placed you intentionally. Nothing about your assignment is accidental. You are positioned where you are because God trusts you with influence you may not yet recognize. Even silent influence shapes outcomes. You are not meant to carry discouragement alone. Bring it to God honestly. Speak it without fear. God is not threatened by your questions. He strengthens those who come openly. When you release heaviness through prayer, clarity returns. When clarity returns, resolve is renewed. Do not let comparison distort your calling. Someone else's assignment may look lighter, faster, more rewarding, but every mission is tailored. God gives each person a portion according to capacity. Trust what has been entrusted to you. Envy distracts. Gratitude stabilizes. The person you are called to remain with may never fully understand your role, but God does, and God's recognition outweighs human acknowledgement. When you operate for approval, disappointment follows. When you operate from obedience, peace remains even when results are slow. You are being shaped into someone who can stand when others collapse, who can remain when others retreat, who can love when others withdraw. This formation does not happen overnight. It unfolds through daily choices to trust God above your feelings. As you continue, strength will rise in unexpected ways. Wisdom will surface when needed. Courage will replace hesitation. You will discover that what once felt impossible becomes manageable when surrendered to God. Obedience builds momentum. Faithfulness compounds impact. Stay attentive to the quiet confirmations God gives. Sometimes reassurance comes not through dramatic signs, but through inner steadiness, through calm resolve, through the ability to keep going without resentment. These are markers of alignment. The assignment you carry is shaping your spiritual authority. Authority is not given through title, but through endurance. Those who remain faithful in hidden places are prepared for visible responsibility. God promotes those who do not abandon what is difficult. You are not alone in this mission. God stands with you, strengthens you, and sustains you. Even when you feel depleted, grace remains accessible. Even when patience wears thin, renewal is available. Even when clarity fades, guidance returns to those who wait. Remain anchored, remain prayerful, remain discerning. Let God lead each step. Let trust override fear. Let obedience outlast discomfort. This mission is not draining you without purpose. It is refining you with intention, shaping you with precision, and preparing you for outcomes that will unfold in God's timing, through God's wisdom, and by God's power. As you continue to stand, to serve, to believe, to remain, knowing that staying aligned with God transforms endurance into impact, pressure into purpose, and obedience into a legacy that continues to grow, deepen, and unfold as long as you do not walk away, but choose to stay rooted, surrendered, and faithful to what God has placed before you. Even now, as the work continues and the calling unfolds further and further without pause, there are moments when God allows you to feel the weight of responsibility, so you will finally understand the value of trust. When the assignment feels heavy, it is not because you are failing, but because you are being invited to rely less on your own strength and more on God's sustaining power. Human effort reaches its limit quickly, but divine strength has no boundary. The moment you stop asking, how much longer can I endure, and start declaring, God will carry me through, something shifts inside your spirit. God often chooses ordinary people to carry extraordinary assignments so that no one can mistake the source of the outcome. If you feel unqualified, uncertain, or overwhelmed, you are in the perfect position for God to work. Confidence in self fades, but confidence in God endures. Your assignment was never meant to showcase your ability. It was meant to reveal God's faithfulness through your obedience. Sometimes the person you are called to remain with reflects resistance, not because they reject you, but because they are wrestling with fear. Fear often manifests as delay, defensiveness, or distance. When you recognize this, compassion replaces frustration. God does not call you to enable fear, but to stand steady while God dismantles it. Your calm consistency can become the environment where courage begins to grow. Do not underestimate how God uses time. What feels like delay to you may be mercy to someone else. God moves at a pace that allows transformation to take root deeply, not temporarily. Quick change impresses people, but lasting change honors God. When you remain patient, you align yourself with the rhythm of God's wisdom. There is also a lesson in learning to release expectations. Expectations often create disappointment, but obedience creates peace. When you expect nothing from the person and everything from God, your heart remains free. Freedom allows you to love without demand, to serve without resentment, and to stay without bitterness. God refines motives in prolonged assignments. Early enthusiasm is tested by sustained commitment. Passion may ignite the journey, but discipline completes it. God is not impressed by how loudly you begin. He is honored by how faithfully you continue when the excitement fades. You may not see immediate results, but God is never inactive. Even resistance can be part of preparation. The soil must be broken before the seed can take root. Hardness often precedes growth. Do not mistake resistance for rejection. God may be preparing the ground through your presence. There are moments when silence becomes your most powerful response. Wisdom teaches you that not every truth must be spoken immediately. Timing matters. God reveals when to speak and when to wait. Discernment grows when you stay attentive to God rather than reacting emotionally. Your assignment requires humility. Humility allows you to remain teachable. Pride demands immediate validation, but humility trusts God's timing. When you choose humility, you create space for God to work beyond your understanding. God is not asking you to carry emotional weight that belongs to Him. Release anxiety through prayer. Release fear through trust. Release frustration through surrender. What you release to God no longer has the power to drain you. Remember that missions often look different from expectations. You may have imagined visible impact, but God may be shaping unseen influence. Influence is not always measured by reaction, but by internal shifts that take time to surface. The strength you are building now will serve you later. Endurance develops authority. Authority grows from obedience tested by difficulty. God entrusts greater influence to those who prove faithful in unseen places. You must also learn to forgive repeatedly. Forgiveness is not weakness, it is spiritual maturity. It frees you from carrying offense and allows God to work without obstruction. Holding offense binds you to the past, but forgiveness aligns you with God's future. God often places you in assignments that expose emotional wounds so they can be healed. What triggers you may be revealing areas God wants to restore. Healing often happens in the context of responsibility, not isolation. You are not staying because you are trapped. You are staying because you are chosen. God does not force assignments, He entrusts them. Being entrusted means God believes you are capable of remaining faithful even when it costs you comfort. Sometimes God allows you to see just enough progress to keep you moving forward. Small shifts matter. A softened response, a moment of openness, a quiet acknowledgement. These are signs of movement. Celebrate progress quietly and remain steady. Do not allow weariness to distort your perception. Weariness makes mountains out of moments. Rest restores clarity. Seek renewal daily. So fatigue does not convince you to abandon what God has assigned. God is shaping your patience into power. Patience is not passive, it is active trust. It requires strength to remain calm when results are slow. This strength comes from God alone. You are learning how to remain compassionate without losing conviction. Love does not mean compromise. Truth does not mean harshness. God teaches balance through lived experience, not theory. Your assignment may feel isolating, but God's presence never withdraws. Even when you feel alone, you are accompanied by divine guidance. Speak to God openly. Listen attentively. Direction often comes quietly to those who remain still. Do not let temporary emotions dictate permanent decisions. Emotions fluctuate, but obedience endures. Anchor yourself in truth, not impulse. God honors steady commitment over emotional reactions. You are becoming someone who understands responsibility deeply. Responsibility shapes maturity. Maturity carries weight without collapsing. God is forming resilience within you that will support future assignments. Stay aware of God's nearness. Awareness transforms endurance into worship. When you recognize God's presence in the assignment, burden becomes purpose. You are not called to be perfect. You are called to be faithful. Faithfulness allows room for mistakes while maintaining direction. God corrects gently when hearts remain surrendered. As you continue, your capacity will expand. What once overwhelmed you will strengthen you. What once drained you will refine you. What once confused you will clarify. God honors those who remain faithful without guarantee of outcome. Faith trusts without evidence. Obedience acts without assurance of recognition. This is where spiritual authority is forged. Your presence matters more than you realize. Your consistency speaks louder than your words. Your patience reflects God's character. Your obedience honors God's design. Remain rooted in trust. Remain anchored in purpose. Remain open to correction. Let God continue shaping you through this mission, refining your spirit, strengthening your resolve, deepening your compassion, expanding your wisdom, and aligning every part of you with His will as you continue to stand, to serve, to endure, to believe, and to remain faithful in the place God has assigned you, knowing that the work is still unfolding. The transformer, Chion, is still in motion. And the impact of your obedience is still growing even now as God continues to move through your willingness to stay and to trust Him without retreating or surrendering to doubt as the journey carries on without pause. Listen with your heart, because this is the moment where truth must move from words into decision. Everything you have heard is not meant to inspire you temporarily. It is meant to realign you permanently. God is not asking for admiration of truth. God is asking for obedience to it. The weight you feel right now is not condemnation, it is conviction. And conviction is proof that God is still shaping you, still calling you, still trusting you with purpose. Look honestly at your life. Look at the people God has placed near you. Look at the assignments you have been tempted to abandon. Ask yourself not what is easiest, not what is safest, not what feels best, but what God has entrusted to you. Somewhere in your life, there is a person, a responsibility, a calling that you were ready to release because it became difficult. God is calling you back to that place, not in shame, but in strength, not in fear, but in faith. This is the moment to renew your commitment, not to comfort, but to calling. This is the moment to say to God, I will not walk away from what you placed in my hands. Let your life become an answer to God's trust. Let your endurance speak louder than your excuses. Let your faith rise higher than your fatigue. What you choose now will shape who you become. God is not distant from your struggle. God is close to the one who remains faithful under pressure. Every step you take in obedience draws you closer to clarity. Every moment you choose to stay aligns you deeper with purpose. Do not underestimate how much power is released when a person decides to trust God beyond emotion, beyond logic, beyond comfort. Let this truth settle into your spirit. You are stronger than you feel because God is sustaining you. You are not delayed, you are being prepared. You are not forgotten, you are being refined. And the mission you carry is not draining you without meaning. It is shaping you into someone who can carry greater weight with greater grace. Walk forward with renewed resolve. Stand where God has placed you with courage. Love with patience. Serve with integrity. Trust without retreat. Let your life declare that obedience matters, that faith endures, that purpose is worth the cost. Stay where God has assigned you, not because it is easy, but because God is faithful, because your obedience carries eternal weight, and because when you choose to remain aligned with God, your life becomes a living testimony of trust, strength, and unwavering devotion that echoes far beyond this moment and settles deeply into the soul as a reminder that staying faithful to God transforms everything.